Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased here to be joined with Loren Murray, environmental scientist, and we're going to have a far-reaching conversation on a wide variety of mind-blowing topics. I am Daryl Hamamoto, professor at UC Davis, Department of Asian American Studies. Loren, it's really great to be with you here today.
Thank you very much, Daryl.
Why don't you lead in on some of the fascinating research that you've been doing?
Well, I'm a UC Davis grad. I graduated in 1968, one of the first women in the geology department. And I came back in the 90s to do my PhD in the ancient history of the Earth's magnetic field, going back 25 million years. And then I met a very interesting man in Livermore. When I was living there, I became a Livermore lab whistleblower, nuclear weapons lab, and his name was Aryan, and he started teaching me about radiation. And so I became an international specialist on radiation, and finally, one day, Daryl, I said, this global pollution with radiation that's killing the whole biosphere is omnicide. It's suicide, homicide, ecocide is every kind of death. But basically it's a death across the whole earth of all living things. And finally I said, this just cannot be an accident. And I sat down at my computer in about 6 years ago, and I Googled University of California plus weapons of mass destruction.
So we're talking about 2010.
Yes.
Roughly.
I'm sorry, it was University of California plus Skull and Bones.
Plus Skull and Bones, oh yes.
Yes.
The Russell Trust.
Yes, and that took me down a rabbit hole. I'm still going down because now I'm investigating who's at the very top, who really rules the world, and I discovered it's a very, very interesting history of ancient Iranian tribes, the original Zoroastrians, and the first world Persian Empire that has controlled the world for the last 5,000 years. And so that brings us to UC Davis and what is occurring now with what was a covert presence of the Jesuits who, and Monsanto, because it's an agricultural college, and Monsanto was started by the Jesuits. And this global transition, 1,000 year, a millennium transition from the decline of the original Silk Road that created tremendous wealth for 5,000 years, and the collapse now, 1,000 years later, of the Western economy, and the rebirth of the Silk Road, which has been engineered by China, and now China and Russia are partners, and Iran now has joined them.
Now, the reason why I'm involved in this project is because many of the audience members know that, well, it's May 7th, 2016, and many of the people who are watching this presentation are aware that the current chancellor of UC Davis, Linda P.B. Katehi, was recently put on administrative leave by President of the University of California System, Janet Napolitano.
Right.
And Ms. Moret here today is going to be bringing together this incredible research she's done in the area of ancient history in reference to the ancient Iranian bloodlines and connect it to what's going on right here and now at the University of California, Davis. And this shows you the importance of this deep humanities civilizational study that's purposely been excluded from the curriculum so that we have generations of of supposedly educated people who are unable to do any type of analytical work that's going to help ensure our survival, our planet's survival, land, sea, and air, and the animal species, including ourselves.
That's just
So we're going
correct.
to drill down in that area.
Hmm.
Please.
And I really want to thank you for the support that you've given me, and encouragement, and the recognition that this is an important part of research, the ancient history that practically no one knows about. And I used to read a lot, read books and read history and believe all of that, but I just got more and more confused. And finally, around that time that I was going down the rabbit hole, I said, wait a minute, Confucius said, signs and symbols rule the world, not words and laws. And when I let go of that and I began trusting myself and my intuition and my experience and my insights, it changed everything. And I began looking at signs and symbols, and that's what opened all the doors. It's all right in front of us. It's there for everyone to see, but they don't know how to integrate, to relate, to put together the information to tell the real story.
Mm-hmm. I can guarantee you that this synthesis, this grand synthesis that you've managed to pull together, it's not being taught in the contemporary university.
No.
This, what we are about to present to you, ladies and gentlemen, is a paradigm buster. And the academic establishment are going to have to come in this direction and acknowledge the incredible contribution that Lorraine Murray has made. Now, she's done it with a lot of open source material, a lot of published books. Everything that she tells you is thoroughly documented. This is some of it's hypothetical, but it's thoroughly documented. It's all part of the discussion, and I hope to chime in periodically as you're laying it out for us.
You're the one who got me here.
You're giving me too much credit, but I'll take it.
Okay, do you want me to blame you?
Yes, you can blame me. I think we're all culpable.
Well, I appreciate
cheerfully culpable.
I appreciate blaming you. So, in the '60s, when I was here at Davis, there were 7,500 students. It was primarily an agricultural school for ag economics and pomology, viticulture. It was how to grow fruits and vegetables, and they had animal science, and it was over half foreign students. And I was in absolute heaven. I loved it. It was a safe place to be. The classes were great. It was just, Davis has always been a very, very nice campus. And today, from spending time in the pig barn, I mean the real pig barn on the campus, and the dairy, and just going out in the vineyards, and it was just so wonderful. And I have come back now in the year 1916. We've driven around the campus today and looked at buildings and names on buildings.
2016.
I mean 2016, okay. Yeah.
We're doing some time slipping here.
Right.
Okay.
And, well, it's because I'm so astounded. It was like being in 1916.
It is a new, brave new world, absolutely. I'm here, and you're telling me, you're giving me this paradisical image of what UC Davis used to be like. It's completely different.
It's completely
today.
different. It's completely international. It's very new world order. It's part of the transhumanism movement. It's the ancient bloodlines are here too. These ancient Iranian bloodlines. Under the carpet. But I was able to lift the carpet, and it is Linda P.B. Katehi, who, when I started investigating her names and her origin and her associations and just her whole history, I went, oh my God, okay, now I understand what's happening.
And just for your information, ladies and gentlemen, Linda P.V. Katei was just put on administrative leave, and I think the pretext for removing her was the fact that she had spent $170,000 of university money in order to scrub her image on social media. And then there was some issue, for those of you who don't know, there was some issue about her serving on boards and receiving cash payment for that. But Lorena is going to be drilling much deeper than that. This is the official reason why she's temporarily being put out of the picture, but it goes much deeper than that. So I thought I would provide a little bit of context there. Please.
Thank you. So Linda Katei was hired from the University of Illinois in 2009 as Chancellor of UC Davis, the sixth Chancellor of UC Davis. And I was here when Merak Hall was built. It was the end of my undergraduate years here. And I knew Chancellor Emil Merak very, very well. And in fact, I was Arbor Day chairman for several years, and I planted the Merak Grove around Merak Hall in his honor, named the grove for him. And he was really a lovely man. I believe he was born in Vienna, Austria. And he was a wonderful chancellor. Students always had priority over other adults in his office. He would walk out of meetings with Congress members, with faculty members, whatever, to talk to a student. And the students were the priority. That's changed now. She came from Greece, and she came through Chicago, which means you're a very, very special person. Many people, like John Kerry's parents, came from Czechoslovakia through Chicago. Chicago is Rockefeller headquarters, and that's why they come specially. They're picked in other countries. They're selected and funded and brought here, and they immediately have good jobs and positions, and usually part of the intelligence operation of the United States. So she came with her husband from the University of Illinois. And the University of Illinois is very interesting. She's an electrical engineer, a specialist in antennas. And her husband, Spiros, it's Seragunas, is a chemical engineer in the engineering department on the campus. And it's interesting that they're both involved in very, very new world order technologies. And she's involved in the antennas. She has 19 antenna patents before she came to UC Davis. And they are all involved with the cell phones, with switching, with integrating with smart meters and other technologies. And her husband's involved in coatings and protective coatings on metals and materials. It's sort of materials science. And this is extremely important now because the huge amounts of nuclear pollution created by Chernobyl, by nuclear power plants, by our nuclear wars with depleted uranium and battlefield nukes and Fukushima. And the neutron bombs that they're using on the battlefield now, and then Fukushima on top of all of that. And there have also been several Chernobyl-level events in the Ukraine with nuclear power plants and MOX fuel, which is what caused the Fukushima disaster. And those have all been in the last year. And no one even knows about it. Mm-hmm. So what that's done is the Wigner effect. The radiation attacks the surface of metals and materials, and it disintegrates those materials. It steals electrons, and I don't know if you've ever seen if you put iron filings on a magnet and they start growing up. Well, that's what all this radiation is doing to the surface of airplanes, to thin metal like the bands that go around and hold hoses on metal nipples, for instance, in hydraulic systems on planes. And we are having a complete breakdown of the entire airline industry from entropy. The Wigner effect is basically the crumbling or the decay of materials. And we're having airplane crashes, we're having emergency landings all over the United States, and as the radiation increases and the exposure increases, it accelerates it. So here is Chancellor Katehi's husband working in a very, very critical area of research on how to coat materials and protect them from this breakdown by radiation, by nuclear pollution, and it's contaminated the entire air column. So who's behind that? Who's doing this insane poisoning of the entire planet? Well, it's the Jesuits. And the Jesuits are very, very prominent within the University of California because they came with the Spanish.
Okay, at this juncture, let me pose a question
Yes.
for the skeptics, because it's very common in this type of discussion here to single out Group A, B, or C as being the source of all the world's ills. And there are books on it, one, the Vatican Assassins. So one question that comes immediately to mind is that are we talking about one singular group? Are we talking about one group in many different guises, different manifestations? Or are we talking about competing groups, Jesuits being one of many? Could you please explain that before we move forward?
Basically, when you look into literature, for instance, in the 1600s in Czechoslovakia, there was I believe he was a priest named Comenius, and he wrote a book about, it was sort of an epic tale, I guess, and he described in that people sitting around together trying to come up with a global poison that would kill many, many people close by and far away. And they were talking about genocide. And if you go back some more into the Bible, you will also find mention of a global genocide. And you will also be shocked at the recommendation to good Christians to go, or Jews too, to go into regions and to kill all of the people and to burn all of their buildings.
Salt the earth.
And salt the earth and destroy all their
destroy the firstborn sons.
All their idols, yes. And so this is basically the Jesuit embrace, enfold, extinguish. It's the secret history of the Jesuits. And the interests behind the Jesuits, the entities that created the Jesuits during the Renaissance in Italy, it was none other than Alessandro Farnese, a Persian. From ancient Persia, his family came through Cappadocia in eastern Turkey, eventually to Italy, and they founded the first 10 Etruscan cities in Italy. And when those were razed, they destroyed them, and they created the Roman Empire. The Romans, the Etruscans, the Holy Roman Empire, they're all Iranians, they're all Persians, it's all Persian blood. Italians are Iranians. Their practices, their beliefs, their food, their clothing attire. The Pope, for instance, wears a papal tiara dome, the papal dome, which is called the papal tiara. Well, that's what men in charge of tribes in Central Asia wear. They wear those very large domed hats. And some of the women do also if they're a leader of the community. And then the red slippers that the Pope wears, those are Central Asian slippers. You see them in India a lot and in Asia. So there are many cultural ties and legends and religious practices that indicate over and over and over again that the Italians are really Iranians. Mm-hmm. And Romania was named for the Roman soldiers, the Iranian equestrian nomadic fighters, warriors, were brought to Romania, to Eastern Europe, and they were the soldiers, the Roman soldiers for the Roman Empire. So you see this fingerprint of Iranian DNA everywhere. And 14,000 years ago, DNA studies of a particular Iranian tribe indicate there was a mutation in the DNA, and it caused different extremes of albinoism. So the most extreme expression is red hair and blue eyes, light blue eyes. And then more moderate expressions are blonde hair, green eyes, hazel eyes, gray eyes. You see a lot of Afghanis with gray eyes. And so now you can walk around the Davis campus or get on a train or walk by some friends sitting on the steps of a building, and you can start talking to them, and you can tell they have Iranian blood. But it has to be from both parents. It's a recessive gene. So that really got me started. And
now it's my understanding that Aryan came from Iranian. That's the
right.
synonym. So
that's right.
It has migrated down into our most recent history, the history of World War II,
yes,
global depression.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing from you is that this extensive history that goes back millennia, right?
Yeah, thousands of years.
Thousands of years.
Yes.
We're witnessing I don't know if it's the end game or not, but we're witnessing the contemporary expression of this bloodline in 2016.
Yes.
And I don't know where you're going with this, but perhaps Linda Kate, where does someone like her fit into this grand scheme?
Well, I had to understand why she was brought to UC Davis. Why
Right.
was she hired?
We know about the antennas.
Yes. And then I discovered she and her husband were both working in technologies that were very relevant to the New World Order agenda. Mm-hmm. So that was interesting. Then I started looking at her name and the origin of the name. So her name is Linda, which is probably an American name that she took on when she came here, P.B. Katehi. And Pisti is what the P stands for. Her first name is Pisti, her real name. And that's a Hungarian name for crowned or victorious. And that name was given to royal babies only.
She's royalty.
She's royalty.
She's of a royal bloodline.
Yes. And the Hungarians are from Central Asia. The early Greek, that word pisti in early Greek is Stephanos, Stephen. So that's what it means in all the languages of Europe and ancient languages of Europe. But that's not her name. It's Pisti, which is Hungarian. The Hungarians came from Central Asia. Mm-hmm. So that was a first name probably in her family, but it's a man's name, which indicates even more that it was an important family name. Even though she was a girl, she may have been the firstborn, and they gave that name to her. That's what happened to me. Loren is a man's name. And then pistis appears in Gnostic texts, which are related to Zoroastrian, the ancient Iranian religion, in the 3rd to 4th century A.D. And then pistici is in a province of Mentera in southern Italy, and the ancient name is Basilicata. Basilica, the churches, grand churches, and so forth. Now, pistici, the chi means the bloodline or the stock of the Pisti people or the Pisti tribe. So there's her link there with Pisti to Basilicata, and her second middle name is Basile, which refers to Basilicata. Basile is a last name. Basilicata is it's in the southern part of Italy, as I said, and it refers to basilica and these ancient, very, very grand churches. Now, it's really interesting that in the 4th century there was a Saint Basilios from that same name, who was the bishop of Caesarea, Roman Empire, and he was one of 4 men who started the Eastern Orthodox Church. So he was involved with Constantine and the whole schism between the Catholic Church and the ones who did not want to submit, the Christians who didn't want to submit to the Pope. So you see she has a royal, religious, high-level religious background, and you would probably call her part of the papal nobility. So then kate, okay, what does katehi mean? Well, I looked up katehi. There was only one reference to it, and it was to a town, a village in Uttar Pradesh, which is northern India, and it's where the ancient Iranians spilled over the Himalayas from Central Asia when their populations built up too much. And it's in the eastern part of the southern side of the Himalayas. Very, very old. All of these names and the roots of her names and all the associations go back before the Christian period, before the Greeks even. So she is very ancient Iranian. Now, kate, if you take the I off, is a very rare rice that is grown on the Caspian slope in Gilan province to the west in northern Iran. And it's actually where Stalin was born. Stalin was Iranian. He was not Russian.
Or Georgian.
Or Georgian. He was Iranian.
Okay.
And I have pictures of him when he was a young man.
Sure.
And so the mother of Ataturk was also from Gilan. Now, this rice is the precursor, or it's the arborio rice of the Italians that the Iranians took to Italy. Arborio rice is an ancient rice the Iranians grew on the Caspian Sea. So that was also kate. There are villages in Iran, in Fars, Gazvin, Khorasan, and Isfahan that are kate, and those are all very, very old centers for the Iranian culture. So there we have absolutely solid evidence what her roots are.
Now, if I could boil it down,
Yes.
we see that ostensibly P.B. Katehi, was brought in because of her expertise in this antenna technology, which I hope you'll talk about its applications
Yes.
currently.
Yes.
19 unique patents credited to her, and then there's her husband, who is a specialist in these coatings or material science. So that's the exoteric reason why they were brought in.
Yes, right.
But what I'm hearing is there's a much deeper metaphysical or esoteric
Yes.
reason why she was brought here to UC Davis
Yes.
and into the UC system.
Yes.
And this drama that's unfolding now, it might be a Punch and Judy show. That's what we're trying to figure out here. It might be just a dumb show for the public. And if so, it's very dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
If this hypothesis,
Yes.
it's a very strong one, I must admit. But as the evidence accumulates, it'll be much more compelling, probably elevated to the level of theory. But I think we're in a very dangerous position if we have such people like this who are helming a major institution. And I hope you will talk about her relationship to, because you mentioned her in passing, Janet Napolitano and her background.
Yes.
Others of that, I guess they call them root races, these royal lines that are
Right.
controlling the destiny of humanity to the present. Please.
Well, some of the others who are on the main stage today, Janet Napolitano, she's from the province, from where Naples is, right next to Basilicata.
She's the University of California president, by the
Yes.
way, ladies and gentlemen, just
Yes.
for your information. Please go.
And she is from the province of Calabria, which is right next to the province Basilicata that that Chancellor Katehi came from. And Leon Panetta is another one. Leon Panetta, who was Secretary of Transportation under Clinton, then he was head of the CIA under Obama for 2 years, and then he was moved to Secretary of Defense. And I said, wow, that's really interesting. Gee, what ties all of those together? It's drugs. Yeah, Clinton built the Mena Airport in Arkansas to bring China white heroin. The Chinese were paying back the Rockefellers for the development funds they loaned China. And so he built the airport. It's a free trade zone. The U.S. government has no jurisdiction. The Walmart trucks and the Tyson chicken trucks go into that airport. They pick up the heroin, and they're the distributors around the United States.
Just as a footnote, ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Hopsicker has produced a DVD series, and he's written books on this very system. It may sound bizarre, crazy. It's never really hit the general public's attention, but what Loren is saying here has been explored and exposed by a number of investigative journalists. If you care to follow up on it, check out the work of Daniel Hopsicker.
Yes, that's correct. And also Dope Incorporated, Britain's opium war against the U.S. Well, this is a lot more than the opium war against the U.S. This is part of this global dope economy that's 5 times greater than the legitimate economy of the world. And so this Mena Airport and Panetta's time in the CIA, of course, they run all the drugs, and then the Secretary of Defense. Well, the military is very involved in the drug racketeering, so forth and so on. I mean, that's what the Vietnam War was about. It was getting opium from the Himalayan foothills because Turkey stopped growing opium poppies. And so they had to find another source. And it's amazing because drugs are just flooding the United States now. And for the last about 6 or 8 years, I've been reading JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and I'd never seen articles about heroin addiction. Well, they're reporting it like in every other article now in JAMA and what states it's going into. And it seems to, heroin use seems to increase when we're having wars or military conflicts in other countries. And it's because the soldiers are self-medicating. The depleted uranium weapons and the weaponry residue that they're exposed to is making them so sick they're going on heroin to just ease the pain. But now, in 2016, I'm getting a lot of feedback from students at Davis that the Davis campus and off campus is flooded with heroin.
See, I never would have known that.
Yes.
Yeah, that completely bypassed me. I thought maybe crystal methamphetamine, or crank, that I knew about. I know about marijuana and, alcohol, but I didn't understand that heroin had become so popular. I understand in the Northeast, however, in states like Vermont,
Yes.
there's all these different overdoses with upper middle class,
Yes.
professional, quote unquote, white people.
That's one of the first places it started that I read about
In
JAMA.
Vermont.
Yes,
In Vermont.
in Vermont.
So it's linked to this larger network of
It's a
Dope
network.
Incorporated.
Yes. We're talking about a global network with one template carrying all of this out.
Mhm.
And originates with those ancient Iranian bloodlines.
Mhm.
And they have 10 bloodline families that sit on a council, and they're the ones who advise the Jesuits. The Jesuits work for the Iranian bloodlines, and the Jesuits were created by Alessandro Farnese, who became Pope Paul III in the
Mhm.
Renaissance, and Fidel Castro is pure Iranian ancient bloodline, and he's directly descended from Pope Paul III.
Okay, you're going to have to unpack that one for us here. Fidel Castro,
Fidel
the
Castro.
idol of all the left
Yes.
liberal progressives
Yes.
in academia,
Yes,
the liberator
Yes.
of El Pueblo.
yes.
That Fidel Castro,
That's Fidel Castro.
the one who is actually one of the richest, most wealthy person in the world.
He is from
Please.
the papal nobility family,
Mm-hmm.
and he's from the Dukes of Castro. And Pope Paul III had 3 sons, and he gave each of them a dukedom. The Duke of Castro, the Duke of Piacenza, which is a city in northern Italy. That's where Castro's father was born.
And you've done the genealogies.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Just so the
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen understand that
And-
this is just not fantasy. This is
And the third
Yeah.
dukedom that Pope Paul III gave to his sons was the Duke of Parma.
Mhm.
And so I was really shocked, and then I started looking at Spanish land grants in California. And there was a U.S. Supreme Court lawsuit in the 1850s. And when the Spanish government turned over their Spanish colonies in North America to the United States government, there was a treaty made, the Treaty of
Guadalupe Hidalgo.
Guadalupe and Hidalgo.
1848.
Yes, that's
Mhm.
right. And the agreement between the two governments was that land grant holders, Spanish land grant holders, would be allowed to retain the land they were granted by the Spanish.
Mhm.
And as soon as the land was turned over to the U.S. government, the state of California immediately sued to counteract, to reverse that treaty, because they wanted all the land. And during that process, the U.S. Supreme Court ended up reviewing it, and they asked for all land grant people claiming they had Spanish land grants
Title search.
to
Uh-huh.
submit their claims,
Mhm.
and the Supreme Court looked at each case and ruled whether it was a valid claim or not. And so out of 850 claims that were made approximately, they awarded or they upheld 670. And then I started looking at the names of the grantees, and I was shocked because the greatest number and the largest amount of land was granted to people with the last name Castro. And then I noticed what counties and what towns, because that's listed too, the modern towns, modern cities, and almost all of the UC, almost all of the University of California campuses are where Castro land grants are.
It's beginning to come into focus now.
And the Livermore Nuclear Weapons Lab, Livermore is a Spanish land grant to the Castros also. So then I said, oh God, there's really a connection. And then I looked at UC Davis and I said, my God, they submitted a bid to have the CERN most advanced collider built here at UC Davis. And it is
You're talking about the Large Hadron
the Large
Collider.
Hadron Collider.
Okay.
Yes, and Japan bid on it, Davis bid on it, or California did, and somehow it ended up half in Switzerland and half in France. And I asked Laurence, why did they do that? He said, well, then neither France nor Switzerland own it. Someone else controls it. And so that would be the vested interests I'm talking about. And actually, it's those hidden bloodlines that funded the development of HAARP and the collider from the very beginning.
Let's go back to
Yes.
Lawrence Livermore.
Okay.
Because this seems to be the institution that was at the dawn of this
Right.
self-destructive hostage, high-level techno-hostage taking
Right.
situation, this extortion scheme that you're going to hopefully
Right.
outline first.
Right.
And perhaps you can talk about your own experience at Lawrence Livermore.
Yes.
You worked there for a time.
Yes,
Yeah.
I worked at Livermore Nuclear Weapons Lab from 1989 to 91. And I worked on the WIP project Waste Isolation Pilot Program in New Mexico, which was to bury nuclear waste underground. And all attempts to make a storage facility for nuclear waste have failed in the United States, all of them. And when the New Mexico one failed, they just said, we're going to do it in Nevada. It's the last place we can do it, at the Nevada test site where they've done 1,300 nuclear bomb tests. And even that has failed because they put it in an active volcanic zone. So 32 earthquakes a month happen where they're planning to store nuclear waste safely for 250,000 years. I don't think so. And so this is so crazy. It's very, very crazy. But let's see, what was I talking about?
We're talking about your background at Livermore, because what I'm trying to establish is that you've done this external research, but you're also have lived this. I mean, you have worked in these institutions, and so you're also bringing the insights of someone who was working in the belly of the beast.
So in 1991, I packed all my stuff in my car one day, and I drove out the gate of the Livermore lab, and I left my keys and my pager in the guardhouse, and I went home. I fired them. They didn't fire me. And with the University of California, they've gone into chancellors' and vice chancellors' offices and marched them, the guards, to the border of the campus, and said, get out of here, you're fired. And they were never allowed to remove their personal items. And so I said, I'm not going to let them do that to me. I'm leaving this place, and I'm taking all my stuff, and I'm going to fire them. And they've never stopped retaliating against me since then. That was 1989, but 91. But I'm glad that I've had this experience. It's been hell in a lot of ways, but you have to be in their house. You have to live in their house to know who they are and what they are, and so that when you leave, you know how to challenge them. You know how to expose them, because what they're doing is immoral, it's illegal, it's insane. They are destroying this planet without our permission, without informing us, and without even having a good reason for doing it. They're just doing it because they can. And I think that's what really woke me up and just changed my whole life, was taking this on.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the biographical element, because I sense there's something that's driving you that goes deeper than pure intellectual curiosity.
Oh no, it's because I love people. It's
Yes.
because I love
Humanity.
nature. I love living things. We live in a beautiful world. The earth is so beautiful.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a game. This is not an academic
No.
exercise, neither for Loren or for myself.
No.
I am in their house. I am working in the belly of the beast. I have suffered, and I'm not going to talk about it too much today, the repercussions of asking certain questions about my own workplace, which is I'm
Yes.
entitled to do as a citizen, as a sovereign human being, as an academic, as an American. I'm entitled to do that, and I will exercise those rights to the best of my ability. But it takes research such as this, cutting edge research such as this, that'll provide us the intellectual, the historical, the analytical framework to understand what we are facing. Because so far, these people have been very good in veiling the truth and hiding it, because the Rockefellers own the University of Chicago. The Russell Trust runs Yale University. All these bloodlines control information, scholarship, and every single aspect, and sciences, of course, almost every single aspect of our lives that shape our world.
And what I learned at UC Berkeley, I was working on gender equity issues and minority equality and things like that in the early 90s. And there were 500 lawsuits against the University of California for gender discrimination, and also ethnic issues also. And so I started investigating, well, what is the University of California? Why are they breaking all these laws and everything? Well, it turns out that Dwight and Gilman started the land grant, the U.S. land grant program, and that was to have the U.S. government allot land in each state to build a state university.
This is the Morrill Act,
Yes,
correct?
that's
Yes.
correct. And it was to educate the farmers, the pioneers, to create teachers and military and farmers, to educate them more. And it was to create a bigger economy. It was to create wealth, new wealth in the United States. It was to benefit everyone, not just the businessmen and the oligarchs, but also the people. And so Dwight and Gilman, they had everything to do with setting up UC Berkeley, which was the first Berkeley campus. So they were very intimately involved with the University of California. And then they went on to establish the other state universities and colleges. But from the very beginning, all of these institutions were exempt from state laws.
This is what I found out.
Yes.
They are a government within a government,
That's right.
a sovereign entity.
And they actually were set up to benefit the oligarchs and industrialists and so forth who went to the Ivy League colleges.
Sure.
So the state universities were set up to train workers for the ruling elite. And so you need to understand the history and the ancient history of issues that you're involved with before you can ever really understand what is really happening.
And as a footnote, President Gilman, who was the first president to really put his stamp on the University of California system, was a member of the Order of Death. He was
Yes.
a Skull and Bones person.
They were both Skull and
They were
Bones.
both Skull and Bones
Yes.
people, and perhaps we can range into this area a little bit later, because there's an occult overlay when we're talking about this.
Absolutely, very, very much so. And the origin of Skull and Bones was in Europe, in Germany.
Sure, 1822.
Yes, that's right. So it all sounds bizarre and everything until you begin putting all of these pieces together, and then you find more and more evidence, and pretty soon you have an airtight case using government data.
Sure. And published books by
Yes.
quote-unquote reputable scholars
Right.
who are always just slightly unable to complete the picture
Right.
purposely,
Right.
because the academic profession does not allow you to fully bring all these different elements of knowledge and information together
Right.
in a comprehensive whole that really gives away the game.
Right.
This is why what we're doing today here is
Yes.
so exciting to me.
So let's go back and look at the history.
Please.
Chancellor Katehi was hired from the University of Illinois, which is a military-based university. It's where the first computer and computer language was made for the Navy. The Navy is there. It's their research lab, their university. And ENIAC was the first computer, and it had a language. And then later on, Fortran came out of the University of Illinois also. But that's where Katehi and her husband landed.
Mm-hmm.
And there she ended up, her grad students, of course, did the research, but she ended up with 19 antenna patents. And these antennas now, waveforms, are the new mechanism to enslave society, to take over the whole entire world. That's what HARP is. There are HARP bases all over Antarctica, and that's in training the Earth's magnetic field. And the animal studies for mind control were done here and are still being done here on the UC Davis campus.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in the 60s, the students would come back from that secret facility, and they were students who did work studies. So they worked in the monkey colony, and they said the monkeys have the top of their heads cut off and their wires coming out of them, and they can transmit waveforms to them and make them just climb up and down in their cage all day long. They can command them to do anything they want to. And it sounded so out there that I didn't pay very much attention to it. But now I understand as I see this all unfolding and other experiences I had.
Speaking of the literature, ladies and gentlemen, you might want to check out a book by Dr. Jose Delgado.
Yes.
Called Toward a Psycho-Civilized Society.
Yes.
And you have photographs in there with the monkeys, the simians,
Yes.
with part of their skulls removed. And I think the technology was called the stem sievers.
Yes.
So this is decades old technology.
Yes.
Who knows what they're doing now? But you're saying that the antenna technology that Linda, quote-unquote, P.B. Katehi, is responsible for is integral to this new phase in mind control, or behavioral control?
It's the delivery system.
The delivery system. Okay.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
And Delgado also wrote a book, The Biology of Aggression. And so they can use these frequencies to cause food riots. They can use these frequencies as in Rwanda, that big, huge massacre in Rwanda. Those were Russian, Ukrainian oligarchs who sent thugs down to Rwanda. The whole place had been wired up with antennas. These guys had been hooked up to computers, and they were programmed before they went down to Rwanda to carry out the slaughter. And it was plain and simply so that the Russian and Ukrainian oligarchs could steal all the wealth of the colonists. And the order was to slaughter all of them, every single white person, and steal all of their wealth, go into the banks, strip their bank accounts, take all their securities from safe deposit boxes. And the Africans there had no money, so they were used to cover the slaughter of the white people. And
now, closer to home, this is speculative, of course. Did you see something similar taking place recently down in Burlingame, California, when the social justice warriors started rioting and acting up?
I didn't know about that.
Oh, yes, overturning police cars, vandalizing them, beating up supporters of Party A, B, or C. This is when Donald Trump came into town.
I
earlier
remember
this
that.
week. Yes.
Yeah.
But what you're describing there was caught on camera by people such as InfoWars, news gatherers.
Yes.
And it's been seen by millions of people all over the world.
Yes,
so, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see a real live, because Rwanda might be removed in time and distance from us, but if you want to see this type of control being rolled out here and now, right in our area, in the United States of America, take a look at that YouTube footage and break it down. I suspect that the antenna arrays were out there.
Absolutely,
they're there.
That? Absolutely, 100%. All of the UC campuses now, the street corners have been taken up. They've put surveillance and other technology packages into the ground. They dug down 5 feet, and then they cemented it in so that it can't be removed. And it's hooked up to the street lights, to the smart meters, to cell phones. It's all integrated now. That's what Katehi's technology is about. It's about integrating all of that. So you get a huge array of antennas that are all integrated, and you control everything.
So the HARP model has been regionalized or localized.
It's been localized. It's been made more granular. It's more powerful, but it's more miniaturized. It's gotten smaller and smaller and more efficient, and had a bigger and bigger impact.
Okay.
So it's a creeping mechanism for controlling humanity.
I've been teaching here at UC Davis for 20 years now, and beginning about 8 years ago, perhaps even 10 years ago, I began to see a 180-degree shift in intelligence level, intellect, analytical ability, expressive ability, intellectual ability, of course, I mentioned.
Yes.
And in attending that, I also saw a gradual acceleration of hostility and anger.
Yes.
And much of this has been directed towards myself and towards other faculty people.
That's right.
And I'm reading that this has been taking place coast to coast, north to south at different universities. So where do the students, undergraduates, I'm at the university, where do they fit into this picture? Are they being used as shock troops for this transformation?
Oh, absolutely. It's even
Please
worse
elaborate.
than that.
Yeah.
But let me tell you what it's like in the 60s. In the 60s, when I was a student at UC Davis, I used to go home to Santa Barbara for holidays and summers. And I noticed, or just Easter break or something, and I noticed that when I was driving back on Highway 5, I'd start getting really depressed about coming back to Davis. This horrible depression and overwhelming fear and uneasiness came over me, and I just never could understand it. But it would always start about 150 miles from here. And so very recently, I was reading about HARP facilities in California. Well, there's a HARP facility in Visalia, and it's to transmit Voice America to countries around the world. And there's also a naval air base in Visalia, a U.S. Navy air base. So that transmission was coming out of that HARP facility in Visalia.
I see.
And that was a long time ago. That was in the 60s. But recently, a woman in Texas, I was telling her about that. She said, my friend has a son who's at Davis now, and he's complaining about the same thing. And there's also a very, very large antenna on the south side of the freeway on your way from Davis into Sacramento, there's a huge antenna out in the middle of a field. That's also a Navy antenna.
Uh-huh.
And that's integrated with the HARP technology and with antennas up in Oregon.
Mm.
So they've been doing this since the 50s.
My gosh. So these
And
are like carrier waves that are affecting
yes.
behavior.
These are ELF, extra long frequency, or ultra long frequency carrier waves, and they put the applications on that carrier wave. So right now they're transmitting suicide frequencies that make people commit suicide. And this is all over the Davis campus.
Mm.
It's all over California. There's signs and billboards all over San Francisco, right on the main Market Street. They're huge 10-foot high displays along the sidewalk right next to the curb. And they're posters with hotlines, for suicide hotlines. If you feel like committing suicide, call the hotline. And they have it on the other side also, so the pedestrians walking down the sidewalk can see it.
Mm-hmm.
And my Native American friends have said, the young people are committing suicide 5, 4, and 5 a night on the reservations.
Mm-hmm.
And the reservations have, the Indian reservations in the United States, they have the mineral rights to them. They were put on the poorest land, but they have 85% of the energy sources. The uranium, the coal, whatever that creates energy, the oil and gas, and they had the misfortune of being given that great wealth, and they've said to me many times, why can't we just give them the mineral rights and have them leave us alone? I said, they don't work that way. So these technologies, now what is so alarming about what's happening in the universities is that in the fall of 2015, less than a year ago, the state university campuses were turned over to Satanism.
Okay, let's stop at this juncture. How do we substantiate that? Where do we look in order to verify that claim?
Well,
All right, because we're doing solid
Right.
scholarship here.
and this has to do with Katehi also.
Okay,
The
that doesn't surprise me.
okay, just a minute. Oh,
So in the
where's
fall,
list?
we had a rollout of,
Yes.
of the satanic agenda.
Yes.
All right.
So I started seeing satanic symbols on and off UC Berkeley, the UC Berkeley campus.
Mhm.
And for instance, I saw the head of the goat, which
Baphomet,
Baphomet,
the goat of Mendes.
in students' windows. I started seeing stars turned upside down, so that the two points of the stars represented the goat's horns.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw American flags turned upside down and backwards on the balconies of the students' apartments. That was representing overthrow of the U.S. government. Laurence and I have recorded the ski team, UC Berkeley ski team, in the house next door to us during parties. They were drinking and dancing and everything, and they were talking in loud voices about overthrowing the U.S. government.
Mm-hmm. No, this is anecdotal, though.
We have tape recordings.
Well, you've recorded it, but you're interpreting it. So, do you have any sort of because I've been reading in the corporate press about the growing popularity of religions such as Wicca. So they're just portraying it as a form of religious expression rather than a satanic takeover. I think, I agree with you. There's something deeper here that.
There's much more. Okay.
Yes, but I want to, for the sake of the skeptics out there, beyond the anecdotal, and I know you've recorded and you've photographed these signs. I've seen them as well. YouTube is full of, there's a satanic ritual taking place at the Super Bowl, at the American Music Awards. The internet's full of that type of display. So we know something's going on. I wanted to find out definitively, is there some sort of Department of Defense or something like equivalent to the National Security Memorandum 200 that was workshopped, a white paper that says we are going to convert the universities and college in the United States to Satanism.
It doesn't come out directly like that, but it's happening not just in California, just on the UC campuses.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening across the United States. It's happening in Europe. For instance, in the UC campuses now, in the land grant university campuses around the U.S., there's very heavy recruiting with very young entering students, female students, to become prostitutes. Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of student prostitution now, which is encouraged by these sort of underground networks, and they're coming from the campus. But in Europe, they have referred to this coming out of the military. And we know that when the U.S. Destroyed Yugoslavia, DynCorp went in, and the first thing they did was to begin recruiting young women who were starving to death and living in horrible conditions to be prostitutes. Mm-hmm. And I saw those beautiful Yugoslavian girls in Tokyo, in Roppongi, which is the nightclub area of Tokyo. And they were obviously on drugs. They were standing in doorways in pairs, and they were looking for customers. Mm-hmm. This is happening at the University of Michigan. They have a satanic group active on and off the university campus.
Well, at Harvard University, some student organization they claim to be satanic or Luciferian was going to hold a black mass on campus.
That's right.
They did call it off.
That's right.
But I think they were testing the waters to see how far they could take this agenda.
Well, off the campus is a satanic group, a formal group.
I see.
In where the University of Michigan is. Is that Lansing? I'm not sure what city it is.
University of Michigan.
But
East Lansing is Michigan State. Ann Arbor.
Ann Arbor.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So they, in the mainstream media, they reported an official satanic group,
right,
organized group, was going down to Louisiana to do a satanic ritual for the city council.
Right.
And it was like there was a big question about whether the city council wanted them to do it or not, but it ended up happening, and now there's a new chapter of that satanic group in Louisiana, in that city. I think it was New Orleans. Mm-hmm. So this is coming out of the military.
Okay.
It's part of the occult.
All right. So does this perhaps trace back to Colonel Michael Aquino?
Oh,
are you familiar with that individual?
Absolutely. It traces back to the Jesuits. It traces back to Mesopotamia, to the Kabbalah and the Talmud, which were magic cult instruction books. Mm-hmm. And they recommended pedophilia in children, but they had to be under 8 years old. Mm-hmm. And it's in the Kabbalah and the Talmud. And properly practicing Jews, I'm not including them, they follow the Torah. Mm-hmm. The Talmud and the Kabbalah are satanic.
The Babylonian cults. Talmud, is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Those are satanic cults.
And are those satanic cults controlled, or were they created by these ancient Iranian bloodlines?
Yes, they were.
Please expand.
For instance, the Aldo Brandini is one of the ancient Iranian bloodlines. It's a famous Italian family. Mm-hmm. And Al is the, Dob is devil, Dini.
The people of the devil.
Yeah, the people of the devil.
Wow.
So they're definitely satanic. They're proud of it. They're open about it. We have a website, lorenmarais.info, and we have a Rothschild ball with photographs of the Rothschilds and their guests and members of their family doing satanic practices.
This is the masked ball photos?
The masked ball.
And by the way, they're called Venetian masks, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Right.
Yes, yes, yes.
So we can see the cultural and the historical continuities, ladies and gentlemen.
And the Venetians were Iranians.
Well, yeah, you alluded to that.
Yes.
That's why I
Yes.
interjected that, because
Yes.
I'm interested in masking.
But the Middle East, these Mesopotamians, all of Eurasia, we know now from DNA studies done over the last 5 years, especially by Russia, all of Eurasia was settled by Central Asians.
Please talk a little bit about the DNA studies, and I
Yes.
assume that these studies are coming out of the Human Genome Project, right?
No, they wouldn't be coming out of the
Okay.
Human Genome Project, which is American. They're coming out of Russian
Okay.
scientific research.
All right, because
Yes.
this DNA, from our conversations,
Yes.
this DNA research provides the scientific backing that helps support this hypothesis or this theory in the making. It's irrefutable. It's ironclad, and I think this is probably the most important development in this type
Right.
of research. It's hard science. It's not fantasy. It's
Yes.
supported by definitive DNA analysis, and you
Yes.
can trace the distribution
Yes.
of these different peoples, these different
Yes.
tribal groups, and
Yes.
how their culture and their religious practices migrated
Yes.
across the world, and how they have been transmitted to us down here to 2016 are embodied
Right.
in people like Linda
Right.
P.B. Katehi.
Right.
Please.
And so these ancient Iranian tribes moved into Europe and the Middle East. So the Basques are ancient Iranian bloodlines.
Is there a DNA
Yes, from
report?
the DNA.
Okay.
Yes. The Berbers in North Africa in the Altai Mountains, the Basques, the Berbers, and the Kurds all came from the Hittites.
And
The
there's
Hit-
DNA research on
Yes,
that?
this is from
Okay.
DNA research and also language similarities.
All right.
And
So
blood,
this is a multidisciplinary effort.
And
But
blood
the thing
types.
is, these disciplines are all compartmentalized.
they're
but
compartmentalized.
You're achieving
Yes.
a grand
Into-
synthesis of all this.
Yes, synthesized it.
Okay.
I've distilled the information
Right.
into a picture that makes sense.
Okay.
And it's all internally consistent as well.
All right.
So you take multi-factors, you start putting them together and relating them, and then you find more things. They introduce new things that you wouldn't have thought of. How could I ever think in a million years I knew that arboreal rice had to be from Iran? And but how would I ever imagine that investigating Katehi's origins would bring me to the source of arboreal rice in Iran?
Or the Familia Castro.
Yeah, or the Familia
Right. The
Castro.
Farnese.
Yeah.
Right.
And
all
so
the different linkages.
So, for instance, with Castro, this is a different kind of a DNA study, but it's physical characteristics and how powerful they are. I said, okay, Alejandro Farnese, or Pope Paul III, worked for a Borgia, and who was the Pope. And when that Borgia died, Lucretia Borgia was his daughter, the infamous Lucretia Borgia. And so when that Pope died, he made Alessandro Farnese a cardinal at 24, and then he made him Pope as his successor. And so I took photographs of paintings of Alessandro Farnese when he was young, and then when he was Pope, and then when he was a very old man as a Pope, in his 80s or something. And then I took paintings of his sons and their coats of arms. The coats of arms are always on the paintings. And then I collected Pope Paul III's grandsons, photos of them. They were cardinals. And then I found a painting of Fidel Castro in black, like a Spanish hat or a monk's hat, and a black robe with just a tiny white collar, peeking through. And I said, "What's this?" Well, it's his portrait which will have his coat of arms added to it after he dies.
Mm-hmm.
And then that will be put in some palace in Italy,
Okay.
in Piacenza, one of their palaces in Piacenza. And then I said, okay, well, what happened in the Hellenic period is that the Farneses, one of them was one of the generals, one of the 8 generals who guarded Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great appointed him to be the governor. He was the governor of ancient Egypt. And when Alexander the Great died, he made himself a pharaoh. And Alexander the Great had given his sister to this general to marry. So they became the pharaoh and the pharaoh's wife. And after that, almost all the Farneses have a middle name or first name of Alexander, Alejandro, or Alessandro. So Castro's name is Fidel Alejandro Castro.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can trace them even before that back into Mesopotamia.
So we've got the genealogy, as you
Yes.
ran with P.B. Katehi.
Yes.
We've got the DNA, and you were talking about the physiological resemblances.
The
that you were
physiological.
doing. Please break that down for us.
So when I got all these pictures together,
Mhm.
and I had a photograph of Fidel Castro when he was a teenager or something with no facial hair.
Mhm.
And so I got a painting of Philip I of Spain, the first Habsburg king of Spain.
Mhm.
And he had a certain kind of lips. They were very thick, and they were sort of had vertical lines in them or folds.
Mhm.
And that is a mutation. It's a genetic mutation. It's actually a defect.
Hmm.
And I compared it to Fidel Castro's lips. He has Habsburg lips.
Mhm.
It's indistinguishable. I mean, it's absolutely a bloodline. And then I did this to John Kerry. John Kerry's family were Jews in the Habsburg Empire in Czechoslovakia, and they were Hohenjuda, house Jews. So they were very, very high in the court, and they advised the kings. Teresa Heinz Kerry is from a Portuguese Hohenjuda family, and her family advised the Portuguese court. And then I found a painting of John Kerry's ancestor on his mother's side. She was a Forbes,
Right.
not Malcolm Forbes.
Of the Opium family Forbes.
The Opium family.
The Yale
Yes.
Forbes.
And I found the first sea captain, Forbes sea captain, in 1823. This painting was painted, and it's in his house, which is now a museum in Boston. Those are the Boston Brahmins. They were the drug dealing captains, and I just couldn't believe it. Oh my God! That ancestor, Captain Forbes, who had 3 of the fastest clipper ships when he was 24, John Kerry looks exactly like him. So these are ancient bloodlines that they keep. They know how to breed, who to breed into the line, and how to keep the physical characteristics. How could someone 150 years later, 175 years later, how could John Kerry look exactly like him? That's like 10 generations or 8 generations.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And then I realized they have very, very strict breeding programs. And for instance, with the royal families, the popes had to always give permission for 2 members of a royal family to marry.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, especially if they were on the throne. And there could be no relatives or family association for 7 generations, or in order to marry. And when the Roman empires collapsed, the Western Empire collapsed first, the Eastern Empire collapsed in the 1500s, late 1400s. These ruling families wanted to reassemble the Habsburg Empire. Remember, the Roman Empire became the Habsburg Empire, and they wanted to recreate that Roman Empire, and they did it by intermarrying very closely related people, but they had to all have land that were pieces of part of the Holy Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. And so there was so much inbreeding in the Habsburgs. The Jesuits did it, actually. And they did it, one particular Habsburg prince, who was to be the emperor, Holy Roman Empire, had so much inbreeding that recently Germany did DNA studies on the whole Habsburg bloodlines. And they said he had the DNA of someone who had been the product of sex between a sister and a brother.
That's Egyptian, isn't it?
That's Egyptian.
That's a dynastic pairing.
Yes.
So what you're saying also, before we leave this point or move on past it, is that certain physical traits are also passed on.
Yes,
that
they are.
They're telltale physical traits because of this breeding program, including mouth structure, in the case of Fidel, the brow, the bridge, the nose structure.
Yes, intelligence, beauty. There are many, many characteristics that they're breeding for, but it can also be a way to wage war. So instead of waging all these wars to reunite the Habsburg Empire, the war was in bed. So they did it through inbreeding.
And then they can reintegrate the empire.
Well, after about
consolidate it.
After about 200 years, a bloodline will just die out because they're infertile from so much inbreeding. Mm-hmm. And so they would just take a cadet family, one of the other branches, and they'd plug them in. Mm-hmm. And so it was the same bloodline, but if you look at the Habsburgs, they all have strawberry blonde hair. It's reddish blonde. And there's a Pope, Orsini, who had reddish blonde hair, and I think he was involved in the Habsburg line.
Okay. Well, that helps explain how, by examining portraiture and today photography, and perhaps some forensic scientists can break it down as well, measure eye distances and eye color, and of course DNA. We're going to be plugging in some of the missing pieces of this puzzle here to further support this hypothesis of this ancient bloodline that's at the head of our world civilization.
Yes, and so
and mean us harm. They want to, from what I'm gathering, they want to exterminate most of the human population, regardless of race.
They do. They've had their own breeding program, especially through the universities. Mm-hmm. I had 53 marriage proposals at Davis and in the UC system, and I was going crazy. It was frightening me to death. I thought they were crazy. I didn't know why they were asking me to marry them. Mm-hmm. Well, they were Kuhn Loeb, the Kuhn Loeb banking family. Mm-hmm. They were there was another one, a couple more. Anyway, they were all banking. Goldman Sachs. There was a Sachs introduced to me in the geology department at Davis in Berkeley, and he said, "You're really a catch," and I didn't know what was going on. Mm-hmm. Now I understand. These are breeding programs.
And you were targeted as a broodmare.
Yes.
That's how Diana Spencer described herself.
Yes. She was a broodmare.
She was a broodmare to help regenerate the,
she was a broodmare.
The decadent line of...
She was a broodmare because her biological father was Sir Jimmy Goldsmith. Sure. And the Goldsmiths and the Rothschilds came from Frankfurt, Germany in the mid-1700s to establish banking in London. to take over
Sure.
that banking center.
Mm-hmm.
And they intermarried. They are Iranians. They are not Jews. They're Iranians. And so that put the Iranian bloodline into the royal family of England.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to find out. You see, Kate Middleton's mother's maiden name was Goldsmith.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a hidden history too.
Sure.
And
there is a book, a fairly decent biography. It's called Billionaire, and it's about Sir James Goldsmith.
yes,
And it will tell you about his marriages, his affairs,
yes,
his dalliances.
yes.
This might be slightly off topic, though, but it seems like bastardy is really important to understanding this.
Yes.
They breed outside of these family
Oh,
authorized
yes,
lines. But
yes.
how do these bastards, in this strict term,
Yes.
how do they figure into this ruling system?
Well, one of them is one of those bastards is Hitler. He was a
Rothschild.
Rothschild.
Sure.
Another,
I thought that was just an apocryphal.
No.
It's,
Another
okay.
one is Bill Clinton's mother, who was the illegitimate child of Winthrop Rockefeller, who was governor of Arkansas.
Arkansas.
That's why Clinton was president, and now Hillary Clinton. She's actually, her middle name was Rodham. What I looked it up, and it was shortened from Brodonsky, and she's from a Jewish family in Brodonsky, Poland.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wasn't that her stepfather? Or her natural, her
No, that's-
biological father?
Rodonsky was her natural
Her
father.
okay.
Yeah.
Because she also had a stepfather who was Jewish, I
Uh-huh.
think. Yeah.
Yeah. No, she's
Okay.
Eastern European.
So they were bred.
They were bred.
They were
That
set
was
up.
a breeding.
Okay.
Yes, that was a breeding program.
And just out of curiosity, because this is in the news lately, there's some talk that Chelsea Clinton was the offspring of Webster Hubbell and Hillary Clinton. Who was Webster Hubbell? I know.
I don't know.
I know he was an advisor to the Clinton family,
Oh.
but she's a dead ringer for Webster Hubbell.
Oh, well then
She's not the child of Bill Clinton. In other
nobody
words.
cares in those families. They just breed who they're told to breed to.
So why was Bill Clinton sterile, or he was unable to breed?
They didn't.
With,
they didn't
with-
want that bloodline. They wanted the other one.
They wanted the Radinsky one, bloodline.
No, they wanted the Hubble.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying
Yeah.
to figure out.
I don't know
You
who he is.
Okay,
so.
that's on the agenda for
Yeah.
researchers. We're deputizing people
Yeah.
who are watching this.
Yeah.
We are deputizing you as researchers, because as you were finding out, it's not coming out of academia. Most of the exciting research and the insights aren't bound by these.
Another one is
areas.
the royal family of Monaco. and-
Grace Kelly.
Yes, Prince Rainier was actually the son of a Algerian, a Moroccan housemaid,
I didn't know that.
and the Prince of Monaco. And he was sterile, so his wife had a baby with no one exactly knows who.
Mhm.
But you know how beautiful they are, Princess Caroline and Princess
Stephanie.
and how gorgeous, very handsome Prince Rainier was. That's because his mother was half Moroccan.
Mhm.
She was Berber. This is the ancient Iranian bloodline bred back into her. Another one is...
Where does the Kelly line come in? She's Irish American
Um,
and Catholic.
She was more than that. She
Okay,
was
that's what I'm
blonde
asking.
and blue eyes, so she's
Right.
Iranian.
She's Iranian. Because
That's
that's what you're referring to, alluding
Yes.
to it as a mutation.
Yes, yes.
The blue-eyed blonde
Yes,
is a mutation.
yes.
So this is again how
Yes.
you can
Yes.
trace this bloodline
Yes.
through physiological.
Right.
And she
Yes.
was world-class beauty.
Yes, very beautiful.
Down to today, which
Yes.
we're still
Yes,
admiring her movies with
Yes.
Cary Grant. And
right. But you see,
Mm-hmm.
she's Irish, and the Irish were Iranian.
Please expand on that,
The
because that's so counterintuitive.
Well, these Iranians with mutations felt more comfortable. The blonde and the redheads, they don't have the right pigment. They
Very
don't have normal.
fair-skinned.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so they felt more comfortable in colder climates or at higher altitudes.
Mhm.
So they migrated up into Scandinavia
Mhm.
and to the British Isles. And there are a lot of ginger men in Ireland. Well, that's Iranian blood, and it has to be, remember, it's a recessive gene, so it has to be from the male and the female.
Is there a DNA study on this recessive gene and tracing Irish people, quote unquote, to Iranians?
Oh, yes, there's,
Okay.
yes.
I just wanted to double check.
Yes.
Just so
And
that
that's
the
in the-
viewers understand that
Yes.
this is not just being pulled out of the hat here.
And that's,
This is science we're
yes.
talking about.
This is science-based. It's solid, and I really trust these recent Russian DNA studies. They did them very carefully, and they did them for a very specific purpose.
I wanted to ask about that. Politically, why are the Russians doing this? Please.
For instance, there's all of this uproar in the Ukraine now because the Ukrainians are saying we speak Ukrainian, and the Russians, the pro-Russian people, are speaking Russian, and they're Russian Orthodox, but we're Ukrainians, we speak Ukrainian. Well, it's the Bolsheviks who made up a pidgin language and called it Ukrainian to set up a dynamic that divided the Ukrainian. They made a Hegelian dialectic artificially. They're all the same people. They came from Scandinavia into Kiev. They're called the Rus.
Which is red.
Rus, yes, red.
Mhm.
And we watched the Ukrainian war for 2 years, and there would be all these soldiers. Some were blonde, the Ukrainians, and a lot of them had dark hair. And then all of a sudden, a little video clip would come on from the battlefield for that day, and there would be a soldier standing there with ginger red flaming hair, and you go, oh my God, where did he come from? And there were Viking colonies all over the Ukraine on the rivers for thousands of years, and in Turkey. There are redheads all over Turkey also.
All the way down through Rome, right?
Yes.
The Varangian Guard.
Yes.
Okay.
And so all of these were ancient Iranians with that mutation who went into Scandinavia to a more comfortable, a colder climate. And then they came down through the Mediterranean on their ships and colonized the Mediterranean and Ukraine and Turkey and the Crimea.
So this marriage between Grace Kelly, Irish Catholic, Irish American, and Prince Rainier of Monaco was really a homecoming.
Iranian bloodlines.
It's a genetic homecoming.
Yes. It was
Right.
Iranian bloodlines.
And you had the power of the entire world focused on this. This was the biggest wedding until Princess Diana married Charles. This was
That's
like
right.
a world historical
That's right.
event. It was a fairy tale princess bride
Yes.
type of scenario.
Yes.
All right. So you had all that energy focused on the consummation of these these lines that were coming back
And
together and fusing.
They keep rebreeding the ancient stock, the chi in Italian, like
Medici.
Medici. Yeah, chi means the stock, the bloodline you're from, or the tribe. It means DNA is what it means.
Right.
And it's always through the female. It's not through the male. It's through the female. And they also breed their animals through the female. That's the most important breeding in the breeding pair. The female is the most important, and it's because the DNA and the RNA in the mitochondria is separate from the DNA and RNA in the nucleus of the cell. And it's the mitochondria that provide all the energy for the body and body functions. So in the organs that use the most energy, the highest percentage of mitochondria are in those cells, and it's the brain cells and the heart cells. So when radiation passes through a cell, it can miss the nucleus, but it can't miss the mitochondria. And so when it damages the DNA in the mitochondria and the RNA, then you have all of these brain diseases and heart diseases, which have escalated. They've gone up exponentially since the nuclear age started with the dropping of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, let's take a brief break so that we can refresh ourselves, and then we'll restart for part 2. Thank you, Lorraine. This has been a great conversation. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to complete today's discussion with a analysis of Urban Shield and connect it to what is taking place here at the University of California, and more specifically the University of California, Davis, with Linda, quote unquote, PB Katehi, and all the other characters in this crazy little drama of ours. So, Loren, could you
Yes.
please give us an overview of Urban Shield?
Yes.
What is the implication there?
So, Chancellor Katehi was hired in October of 2009. In March of 2011, Fukushima occurred. And in October of 2011, a military exercise with international troops was carried out in the San Francisco Bay Area on the UC Berkeley campus. And this included military personnel, the U.S., Israel, and mostly the Aramco oil plantations in the Gulf region.
So is Saudi Arabia involved in this?
Not Saudi. I don't believe Saudi Arabia
Okay.
was, but the United Arab Emirates,
Okay.
Kuwait, and
Israel?
and maybe Saudi Arabia was involved. But
Any Asian countries?
no,
Russia was not involved?
No.
Okay, just those
No.
that you know. Okay.
it was.
All right.
I remember it because I thought it was very strange
Okay.
to have only Middle Eastern troops. That was really strange.
Okay.
And they were doing. They were fully armed with live ammunition and everything, doing exercises.
So you were an eyewitness to these exercises?
Yes, on the UC campus, UC Berkeley
All right.
campus.
Let's
yes.
establish that Loren saw
Yes.
this with her own eyes.
And that was completely bizarre. Well, they're having this every year. And Israel received the top award for military prowess from the Urban Shield organizers. It's the Pentagon. For their performance on the UC Berkeley campus. But isn't it bizarre to have a fully armed military exercise on a university campus?
From what you've told me, no, it doesn't
No.
surprise me anymore, but it's untenable, and my gosh, what have we become?
Well, it means foreign troops are coming to our urban areas.
Okay.
They have talked. There's been talk from the military and military programs that people have been able to get documents, government documents, verifying that they plan food riots. When Janet Napolitano came to the University of California as president about 3 years ago, it was in October, the first thing she did was to send people out from Homeland Security and FEMA to survey all of the food sources in the Bay Area. And they went in and they took over cash registers for a week, so they got the whole money flow. They checked these food stores, little grocery stores, restaurants. They took them all over. They occupied them. And now they have the ability to completely lock up all food in America. And this is what is going to incite the food riots. And
Now, the purpose of that is what? For the civilian population to cry for martial law? Or
Yes,
for
yes.
for the government
Yes,
or the
yes.
men in the powder blue helmets to
Yes.
come and rescue us?
Yes, yes.
To bring us food?
Yes,
So they're going to start.
yes.
This is a siege
Yes.
warfare.
It's a siege warfare, exactly. That's exactly right. And it's to subdue the civilian population to be subservient and obedient to them. And they don't get fed if they don't do what they're told to do. So So Urban Shield happened, and then 2 weeks later, the George Soros Foundation funded a color revolution in the United States. This is after all the color revolutions they did in Central Asia and the Middle East. And we know what happened to those countries. They were wrecked. So George Soros and the Open Society Foundation that he funds sponsored the Occupy movement, which started on Wall Street in New York City, and then it spread all over the world, including the Bay Area and Davis.
Of course.
Now, what is very bizarre, and no one has been able to answer my question, why was that Occupy situation, why did that happen on the Davis campus when Katehi was chancellor? Because Davis was never anti-war. They weren't interested in anti-war. They weren't interested in free speech in the 60s. They were just so passive. I was a student here then. And I even went one day with a professor. He drove me down to Berkeley. He'd gone to Berkeley, and I worked for him, Dr. Axelrod. And he said, let's go down and look at the campus. I know they're shooting tear gas and stuff at the students. So we went down. I think we were going to the library, and my God, there were people running all over the place. They were throwing bricks off of balconies. There was tear gas. The police were using it all over the campus to subdue the students. It was just so different from...
What year was this about?
That was about 1968.
68, okay.
Yeah, it was towards the end of the Vietnam War.
Right, the whole anti-war movement.
Yeah,
sure.
It was the anti-war movement. And that was very, very bizarre. I just wanted to go back to quiet, peaceful Davis. And it's still really quiet and peaceful. It's a very nice campus, very nice ambiance.
Deceptively so.
Yeah, deceptively so, until you find out what's really going on. So the Soros Occupy movement, Laurence was observing it in Oakland and San Francisco, and he realized that there were things that were very strange, like goon troops dressed up like activists, and then he realized it was really dangerous. He got on a plane and left. He went to the East Coast, and that night is when the first murder happened of people involved in that Occupy movement in Oakland. So it got violent after that, and it was infiltrated by law enforcement. So he was right, it was too dangerous to be there.
And that was part of the MO back into the 60s as well.
Yes, so what happened is, of all places, Davis had an Occupy movement, but the students were very, very quiet, and they were very peaceful, and they were sitting on the ground with their hoodies on and their heads down, and it was...
This is November 2011
yes,
we're talking about, around
yes,
Thanksgiving time.
Yes, and they weren't rioting or anything, and I mean, they were completely peaceful. They had a constitutional right to express their opposition to whatever they wanted to. And so I guess that now, you see, the chancellors don't do anything without an okay from the UC president's office, and or they're very carefully handled and instructed and everything, programmed. And so Linda Katehi sort of stayed inside the Marac Hall until 2 or 3 in the morning, and then it was in the middle of the night or very late at night. And she came out, and the students were sitting on the ground. There wasn't a peep out of them, holding candles. And she walked through that crowd. She's very attractive, but that night she looked like a demon. And she walked through that crowd with these long strides and this very, very horrible look on her face. And these are her students, doing what they're entitled to do legally. And she went through the crowd, and then she disappeared. And then I think it was the next day, the police, the campus police came in with cans of, they called it pepper spray, but it was actually bear repellent. And that's a play on the bear represents the University of California, the grizzly
the golden bear.
The golden bear,
Yes,
right.
which is also on the state flag
Right.
of the California Republic.
That's right.
Yes.
It's a logo, it's a symbol of the state of California. And so they said it was pepper spray, but it wasn't. It was bear repellent. So
Okay. Golden bear repellent.
So the order came from the president's office.
Which is? Who is?
Janet Napolitano.
Okay, of this bloodline
Yes.
we're talking about.
Yes,
Okay.
of what we're talking about.
Mhm.
So that caused a global scandal. It was covered by all the media everywhere. Katehi was investigated, and she was blamed and everything. But of course, the president's office protected her, and she was not put on administrative leave. I don't know if there was an investigation done, maybe a wimpy one or a halfway one. But
I think they had William Bratton come in as an outside consultant, and of course he wrote a report that was going to minimize her responsibility.
yeah.
You know who he was? He was a former police chief of, I think, Boston, and then
Boston.
then he was in Los Angeles,
Uh-huh.
and now he's just sort of a freelance police brutality consultant.
Yeah,
That's William Bratton.
He's their boy now.
He's their boy.
Yeah.
And we should look in his genealogy.
We
as well.
should. And so what Chancellor Katehi actually did was she violated their constitutional rights to free speech, to
freedom of assembly.
freedom of assembly, and in other ways as well. So so that was very, very strange. I never did understand that.
Just as a sidebar, I had dinner with a faculty person who will go unnamed, and he said that at a faculty meeting, he's with a very large department here at the UC Davis campus, P.B. Katehi, I'm just going to call her P.B. Katehi, not Linda, her cover name. P.B. Katehi came to the faculty meeting, and she gleefully, gloatingly announced that she was going to move on these students. She told them the revelation of the method, what she was going to do to it. So what I'm saying here is that there was malice aforethought involved. She had planned to do it.
This is the spillover of Urban Shield. That was the kickoff. The oppression and suppression of now the universities.
So was there a ritualistic component to this?
Absolutely.
She needed to bloody her sword
Yes.
to earn her bones,
Yes.
to get the little teardrop
Yes.
tattoo
Yes.
under her eye.
She had to kill the children.
She had to kill the golden bear,
Yes.
kill the Americans,
Yes. Kill the dream.
kill the dream.
Kill the freedom. Kill the hope. Kill the future.
Wow.
And so Katehi was the introduction of overt takeover of not only UC Davis, but of the University of California and of all universities in the U.S., the land-grant universities, by the Jesuits and Monsanto. You see, the Jesuits created Monsanto, and Monsanto now is building buildings all over the Davis campus with their name on the buildings, and you see more and more administrators who have that Jesuit look. They have a look. This is an excellent book, The Secret History of the Jesuits. It's by Edmund Paris. This is what the Jesuits did to 68 countries in Europe, destroyed them in the 1800s. And then they came to the U.S., and they're doing the same thing now here. And
Could you describe the look?
the look
The physical
is
look.
the physical look is wire rim glasses. It's all minimalization. It's a real stretched skin, sort of, very clean shaven, and then just hair short and slicked back. It's just a real clean-cut look. I noticed that a lot of the people who go to Bohemian Grove have that same look. So those are the financiers and economists and the people who drive the economy. They have that same look.
Okay.
Now, Obama, everyone in his administration, 10% of Congress, they have all been Jesuit trained. Governor Brown, Leon Panetta is a Californian, Janet Napolitano, they all went to Santa Clara University, a Jesuit institution.
Which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is down around the San Jose area, right in the midst of the Silicon Valley.
Around the same time.
Yeah. So geographically, it's positioned right in the center of world technological innovation and surveillance.
And in the United States history, first of all, the Jesuits were terrified when the colonists made the U.S. The Declaration of Independence, and then the civil rights that we have, and our Constitution. And so they had 3 secret meetings in Italy in the early 1800s. One was the secret Treaty of Verona, I believe it was 1815. And France, Austria, Prussia, and Russia made a secret agreement to create a fund and to fund it, all of them together, and that money would be used to defeat all democratic movements in their countries, on the continent, and in any future places, anywhere in the world where a democratic movement might start. Even though there wasn't anybody there now except indigenous people who wouldn't be doing that. And that fund was received trillions of dollars in World War II from the looting of 12 Southeast Asian countries and China of the accumulated wealth over 5,000 years of Silk Road trade. All of that money was looted and stolen, and it was...
This was what they call Yamashita's gold.
Yamashita's gold,
with Sterling Seagrave and Peggy Seagrave
Yes.
wrote a great book on it, which
That's
should
right.
be required reading for
That's
everybody because it brings all these different threads together, and it also shows how this project, this centuries-long project, how it's been funded.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's how it's funded. It's by stealing accumulated wealth. Now, who would know all that wealth was there other than those ancient Iranian tribes? They were the silk merchants that made that Silk Road really, really rich. And they were the richest of all. So that money was all stolen. It was more gold than even the bankers in London knew existed on this planet. It was much more than the Nazi gold. And that was taken to Japan. The emperor hid it under his palace. And when that was full, then they hid it other places. And then the U.S. embargoed Japan. So it was transported on Red Cross ships that were supposed to be full of wounded soldiers, and instead it was full of gold and treasures, gemstones, everything. And it was placed in 67 hidden repositories that were built by Japanese engineers all over the Philippines. And
they had very sophisticated tunneling technology and know-how, which had trapdoors and all types of secret passages.
Yes. Yeah. And that was all hidden in the Philippines, and when all of them had been completed and the very last one was full of treasure, one of the imperial princes was sent in a submarine to the Philippines.
Prince Chichibu.
Yes. And he went to that last repository to celebrate with all the engineers who were there. And at midnight, he walked out. They were all drunk and singing and out of it. And he walked, he took his driver, his little young Filipino driver. They walked to the entrance. He blew up the entrance with explosives and sealed them in where they died. And he had the map of all the repositories in his pocket. The driver took him to the beach. He gave him the keys, the driver to the keys to the little driver, and he said goodbye. The car's yours. And he got in the submarine and went back to Japan. Mm-hmm. Now, all of that treasure was discovered, well, Colonel Lonsdale, who was operating in Japan during and after World War II.
We're talking about Colonel Edward Lansdale.
Edward Lansdale, involved in the Kennedy's assassination. And General MacArthur got together and they said, should we give all this treasure back to the countries it was stolen from, or should we keep it in secret accounts? And they decided to go and discuss it with President Truman. They decided to keep it in secret accounts all over the world, and that's been funding the overthrow, the very first overthrow of a democratically elected leader was Mossadegh of Iran. Mm-hmm. And it's been overthrows, 100 years of overthrows, but the overthrows since World War II have been funded by that huge amount of money, trillions and trillions of dollars.
And slightly more modestly, from my reading, from what I've gathered, the election of Richard Nixon to the presidency was funded by this Yamashita's gold, this treasure.
That's right.
And also the Liberal Democratic Party in Japan, which has ruled almost continuously since the end of World War II, has been funded by this black budget.
Yes.
Not budget, but black bank.
And Nixon gave Okinawa back to Japan without even, the Japanese didn't even ask him for it. They're going, what? We didn't even ask him for it. What's he doing that for? Well, he wanted election money so that he would get elected, and they gave it to him. Mm-hmm. So you see all this underground stuff is happening. It's happening right here at Davis.
Certainly.
The same thing. It's the same agenda. It's the same ancient bloodlines, and it's the same secret money that's funding it. So that's why this is so
just as a
very, very
sidebar,
important.
I wrote a chapter in this book of mine, the current book that I have out, Servitors of Empire, which I devote an entire chapter to Iris Chang. And she was being heralded as this incredible researcher and historian, rightfully so. She was a very good researcher. She did the book on the, as it's called, the Nanjing massacre. Mm-hmm. But then she befell these groups. She was on the Yamashita story, gold story. And I think what happened in her case is that she found out that the official history and propaganda that she had been fed in order to research this book, right, on the Nanjing massacre, which is a propaganda piece largely. This is what historians say, not me. This is what they say. And this particular chapter here talks about, and I think her mother is in agreement with this, her so-called suicide was because she had found out that the Yamashita's gold was financing the very system that she thought she had been supporting, American democracy.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is all very, very relevant for what's going on today.
And I want to recommend this highly, Servitors of Empire, Studies in the Dark Side of Asian America. And this is by Daryl Hamamoto. And there is so little written by Asians or non-Asians about the Asian players in all of this.
Absolutely. And secret societies.
And secret societies.
And the role of the Jesuits in Asia, including Japan, Philippines, Vietnam.
Yes, yes.
That's where I'm taking
and
this.
And they came with the Portuguese explorers, and they were installed in Japan in the 1500s.
Then they were kicked out.
Then they were
in
kicked
1587,
yes.
which allowed Japan to flourish and to develop to become a very powerful country that the Jesuits never forgave them for.
That's right. And so please read this. Please give it as a gift to people. Please recommend it, because it's very, very informative, and it's a huge missing piece of the history of our nation.
And even more importantly, please support me in my battle with my Department of Asian American Studies, which
Yes.
took me out of 3 courses this past winter quarter.
That's right.
Because they do not want the students to get this type of information.
That's right.
With the full backing of Linda Katehi, Dean Susan Kaiser, and all the different Jesuits that are in these power positions that are really running the show here at the University of
Eichenbach.
California.
Eichenbach.
Yes, this guy Carl,
Eichenbach.
is it Eichenbach? Yeah. He fits the profile. Right?
He's
So
the co-chancellor.
he's the co-chancellor, and I announced this
Yes.
at my faculty meeting this past week, and of course my colleagues scoffed at it and laughed at it. Oh, he's just her handler in her press. I said no, he's he's the co-chancellor.
Yeah.
And then one of my colleagues,
Yeah.
who's beginning to see that I'm not the crackpot that I,
Yeah.
because they try to paint you as being crazy and a
Yes.
crackpot. She looked it up in her computer in real time as I was saying this, and she said, "Oh my gosh, he's right.
Yes.
He is the co-chancellor."
Yes.
So the point here, it's not about me. It's just look behind the veil, look behind the curtain, and see who's really in power and how the system functions. And there are more and more people, and I predict there's going to be a renaissance in academic and scholarly literature in general that's going to be fueled to a large extent by the innovative research of my colleague, my dear friend, Lorraine Murray.
Yes.
And that's what the enterprise is all about.
Yes.
That's what the human experience is about.
Yes.
This is how we've been able to survive and excel as a species.
Yes.
And we are going to prevail in this
Yes.
in this effort because we can break it down in ways that no ENIAC computer or AI program or logarithm even comes close to.
So, so that is why Occupy happened here. That's why Katehi was chancellor. This is the New World Order, the ancient Iranian tribes making the rules and conditioning people and students and universities and the public and parents to expect this type of illegal and unfair behavior, because this is the future. And Dr. Hamamoto came up with a plan for an institution of cooperation between Vietnam and UC Davis. And the university was, Davis, the campus, was really, really interested in this, in supporting it. And Dr. Q Lin helped by taking delegations from businessmen and so forth, different interested people, to Vietnam and back. And so now the university is taking this over and trying to push Dr. Hamamoto out of the university by making things up and accusing him of things he didn't do and putting him on administrative leave. Well, the irony is that 2 months after he was put on administrative leave by Dr. Katehi, now she's on administrative leave. So these are just now she's in a UCD ethics scandal, and some of the things that she's been accused of are controversial moonlighting activities. DeVry University board seat, she took that, and John Wiley and Sons board position, and took hundreds of thousands of dollars in money from them, which is illegal. It's a conflict of interest. She was involved in taking hundreds of thousands of dollars in university money and having the pepper spray scandal scrubbed off the internet. In other words, she paid a computer personnel companies, private ones, to remove that whole scandal from the internet.
Most recently, she has contracted an external attorney.
Yes.
In Sacramento, spending I don't know how much money in order to go after me one more time, since they
Yes.
haven't really
Yes.
been able to bury me. completely.
And the University of
The
California.
university is paying for that. The taxpayers
Yes.
of the state of California are paying for the outside persecution of me.
And the University of California has buildings full of lawyers that are on salary, that are UC employees. They use those for the first lawsuit. They don't hire outside law firms until the appeal. If they lose, they will appeal it. And they spent over $5 million on outside lawyers on an appeal for an award of $350,000 to a Mexican-American man at UC Santa Barbara. So they're spending taxpayers' money, student money, $5 million to reverse a $350,000 judgment. It's so bizarre. She also, the strategic communications budget soared also. She also increased the salary by $50,000 of her daughter-in-law after her son married this woman on the UC staff at Davis. And then she gave the woman a bunch of promotions and also took her son out of his graduate school department and put it in his wife's department and put him under the supervision of his own wife. Mm-hmm. So and then she lied to the president's office about the board money and everything. So
structural corruption from top
yes.
to bottom, from the departmental level, as in my case, all the way to the administration,
to the president's office,
to the president's office,
yes.
at the expense of the American public.
Yes, and the Board of Regents.
And the Board of Regents.
They're involved too.
Now, Loren, as we wrap it up here, I wonder if you could perhaps give us a vision of how
yes.
we're going to prevail over these individuals, this cast of characters, which so far have gone undetected and as a result unpunished.
First of all, this is an extreme example of political ponerology, and that is the evil inherent and expressed through politicians, and these are public figures. They're a form of politicians mm-hmm. in the education arena.
So how will we prevail over this ponerology system?
They get away with it because the public doesn't know. The students don't know. It's all done secretly.
So we'll prevail by
yes.
educating them.
Yes, by educating people, by exposing the scandals, by presenting the truth, and it empowers people by putting that truth out and just leaving it alone. You don't want to force people to do anything. You want to say, here's the information when you're ready to use it. Mm-hmm. And it empowers people to find their own solutions that a lot of times are better than what you would have thought up for
sure.
them. And I think that the students on the campus, understanding the corruption of Chancellor Katehi, were responsible for this scandal now coming out in public, and for the removal of her. Well, she's only on administrative leave for a month on mm-hmm. a paid salary, mm-hmm. but I think that people who are in the California government are not happy about it either.
Right.
And there are many calls. I believe that Jenna Napolitano, it was reported in the media several times, has asked for her to resign.
I see.
And so
she has retained a lawyer, so she might not go without a fight.
She'll probably not go without a fight, but mm-hmm. when she was in a scandal when she left the University of Illinois, sure. So
mm-hmm. And so was her replacement,
yes.
who's the acting
yes. chancellor.
So we're talking about a system, ladies and
yes.
gentlemen. We're talking about individuals here, but we're talking about a system which is in bad need, serious need of investigation, reformation, and the perspective that Ms. Moray has provided us today
yes.
has been an incredible tool
yes.
in prying up these barnacles that are slowing down the ship.
Yes.
Because we're going to sail to to the outer universe if allowed to do
Yes.
so. That's our part of our endowment. Science
Yes.
is not inherent. It's liberating. But we
Yes.
have these types of people who monopolize this knowledge
Right.
and have perverted it.
Right.
So we're going to free it up, and we're going to enter into a new era, a renaissance of human creativity and achievement.
Absolutely.
If these people are just shunted aside. And
And-
we'll do a peace and reconciliation. We'll say, just go away, all right?
Yes.
Just let us do our thing. We're
Right.
not interested in throwing you in prison where you should be. Just let us be. Let us fulfill our destinies as human beings.
And what's so egregious is this is an outrageous violation of university policy, of state government policy, of constitutional rights.
It's criminal.
It's criminal.
Let's call it what it is. It is criminal.
And yet, this selective enforcement, putting her on administrative leave for only 1 month, is typical of the University of California. And there's so many people who've done even worse things in the administration who never were made accountable for it because it's part of the culture. Now, what is happening in the University of California and UC Davis is this swing to Satanism is converting these institutions into places where they're bringing foreign students here, they're bringing out-of-state students here, and they're training them to occupy their own countries, to overthrow their own governments, and to act as saboteurs in corporations and places where they go for employment in the future. And so it's destroying the fabric, the social fabric, and the economic fabric of their countries.
We have been warned, ladies and gentlemen. It's up to us to subvert these plans.
That's right.
And they've been workshopped and they've been war gamed. They've been white papered. We know the problem now. Now is the time to act. So can we, at this point, promise to carry on the conversation and
Yes.
further deepen it
Yes.
at a later time?
Yes.
Ms. Murray, Lauren Murray, my dear friend and colleague, thank you so much for this conversation. It has been a joy, a pleasure. I haven't had this much fun so far as intellectual exchange in years. Because I'm used to working with cowards, bullies, and ignoramuses.
Well, I'm not afraid, and I love adventures, and this is really the best adventure I've ever been on, with the wildest characters involved. And who would ever think Fidel Castro was an ancient Iranian who his family and his bloodline have ruled the world for the last 5,000 years? Who would believe that? That's how deceptive they are.
We're going to put humanity back on top.
Yes.
Thank you, Loren.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Goodbye, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.
Yes.